Hey everybody, welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I want to talk to you guys about the controversy, which I did not think it was going to become a controversy, but it is, of Baby Yoda eating Frog Lady's eggs. And, in my initial review, I even talked about how, it was like a shocking moment, and I genuinely, put my hand on my mouth in shock, because I was like, what the hell? But I took it as like a shock value kind of dark joke, but not everyone took it that way. And if you go on Twitter and on YouTube and even a few website articles, it's definitely become a much bigger controversy than I ever imagined that it would be, because there's some people out there that are taking it very, very seriously. I want to start off by saying that when I initially heard people were taking this on a serious level and they were actually upset about it, I didn't bother to look anything up at first, and I thought it was I was like, oh, come on, it's just a shock value joke. It's not a big deal. And in fact, here's what my original tweet was. I said, I didn't know people were actually getting upset about the Baby Yoda eating eggs thing. It was just some dark humor, people, chill. We saw him eating whole frogs anyways. And a lot of people share that sentiment. However, I did later on actually look into it and actually try to see why people were upset. Okay, in fact, there was a tweet by Phil Sozak from the Star Wars story group, I think, or art group, and basically he just kind of doubled down on hey, those eggs were unfertilized. They were not there was no embryos inside those eggs. They were just eggs, just like the chickens that we eat every day. It was meant to be shocking, and it was meant to be taken as a comedic relief, oh my god, that's so crazy that they did that, which is exactly how I took it. But definitely, if you look at the replies to that tweet from Phil Sozak, definitely a lot of people were upset, and they're like, no, here's why we're upset. So I started reading a lot of that, and I understand why they're upset. I get their point of view. I still don't agree with it, but before anything else, let me start off with this. As a human being myself, who does not produce eggs, and that is not a thing in my life that I will ever have to go through, my opinion on this matter, on how upset anyone should be, is worth pretty much nothing. Okay, these are just my own thoughts and feelings on the joke and the way it played out and the way people reacted to it. But if you are someone who actually goes through this kind of stuff in real life, and you produce eggs, and this is a thing in real life for you, and this made you upset, that's completely valid. Okay, I'm not here telling you, oh, you shouldn't be upset by this, that's dumb. That's not what I'm doing here. Okay, I'm just sharing my own thoughts and my own opinions, but I'm putting that out front. As someone who does not produce eggs, and this is not going to be a part of my life at any point, my opinion is worth pretty much nothing. Literally, you can stop this video now, throw my video in the trash. There goes my opinion in the trash. That's fine. Okay, so I want to get that out of the way. Okay, so if you're genuinely upset by this, that's valid to do that. I'm just letting you know how I see this whole situation, this whole controversy. I still might get in trouble for sharing my opinion here. I don't know. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read basically this whole thread that I made. And you're just on screen, you're just going to see this, I guess, depending on how you feel, is a horrifying image of Baby Yoda about to eat this egg on screen here. So here's what I said. So I went and looked at the responses to Phil Sostak's post about the episode, and have started to get a better idea of exactly what people were having an issue with. I'll start by saying that as a human who does not produce any eggs, my opinion here is worth pretty much nothing. I think some people have taken Baby Yoda eating the eggs in a much more real-world context than I believe was the intention. Okay, now, what I mean by real-world context is basically that, the different media is meant to be absorbed. It's intended by the creators to be absorbed different ways. A good example is we do not watch Looney Tunes on the same real-world level that we watch Breaking Bad. For example, let's take the violence in both of those shows. Looney Tunes has plenty of violence. Horrible violence, right? But it's cartoon violence. It's meant to be funny. It's a joke. All the violence in there, they can do like horrible things. Looney Tunes, and you know, they're literally cutting each other up into pieces with like axes and all kinds of stuff. But there's not a lot of blood, if any at all, and it's all cartoonish, right? It's meant to be a joke. But Breaking Bad, something happens in Breaking Bad, someone gets shot. It's like you take that on a dramatic, real world level. Okay, so different media is meant to be taken with different context. You understand what I'm saying? There's different levels that we take things. Now, basically all I'm saying is that I think that some people are watching The Mandalorian, and maybe even Star Wars as a whole, on a real world level. And I understand how we get to that point, because we do become emotionally attached to a lot of things in Star Wars. But for me personally, I always allow myself to take a step back from that and say, this is still a fantasy with puppets and laser swords, and you're not supposed to take it that seriously. It's somewhere in between Breaking Bad and Looney Tunes, and there's a balance there, and that's where Star Wars is, okay? Because it is live action most of the time, but it's also a fantasy in space where none of this actually makes sense. So anyways, I'm going to keep on reading. While I definitely agree that it was shocking and disturbing to go from a scene where Frog Lady talks about how important the eggs are to her, then immediately see Baby Yoda eating them, I took it as disturbing to the point of absurdity, which I do believe was the intention. It honestly reminds me of a similar humor style of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2, wherein something may be in a serious context 1 minute, then immediately switch to over-the-top exaggerated gore to the point of absurdity, thus rendering it funny. It's not a style of humor that everyone is going to vibe with, and it's also not easy to pull off, as you have to communicate to your audience that, hey, this was supposed to be shocking, that was the joke. It all comes down to each audience member's style of humor and on what level you're reading the material. Okay, so, it's exactly what I just said. It's just like, if one, for example, like Evil Dead, like 1 minute he's talking to his girlfriend, he's giving her this necklace, it's all like this pleasant thing. The next minute she gets possessed, he has to behead her and bury her and all that stuff. It's crazy, right? It's very dramatic. And then she bursts through the door as an obvious, really cheap looking puppet that's on strings, and she's carrying a chainsaw, and it's walking really funny. And there's like a tonal shift there, and it's supposed to be funny. It's supposed to come off as humorous, how silly it looks. Like that was the joke, and so for me, when I see Frog Lady talking about like, I'm going through this really troubling time, I'm trying to, this is the last of my family line. Some people thought it was like a species line. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be her family line. This is the last of my family line. I'm trying to get it back to my husband. She's going on this journey. And then we see Baby Yoda, like literally immediately, Baby Yoda's like, slurp, just eating one. And I took it as shocking, like I said. Like I was like, oh my god. But I took it as a joke, because I'm like, okay, the show clearly did that on purpose. That the immediate tonal shift was definitely on purpose. But again, that's not a humor everyone's gonna get. Some people are gonna take that as a tonal shift, as like an issue, as like a mistake. But I'm like no, they did that on purpose. That was supposed to be the joke. The joke was supposed to be how shocking that was to see, because we just got like invested in her story, and then immediately some of those eggs are gone. That was supposed to be the joke, and that's, I guess, what I'm trying to convey here. So let me continue. For me, Star Wars is fun to get invested in, but I never allow myself to take it in a real world context. Otherwise, things like the Jedi taking infant children away from their families to train and become a cult wizard would be hard to gloss over. Anyways, yeah, that's basically just what I was saying before, how like, I take Star Wars, it's somewhere in between Breaking Bad levels of reality and Looney Tunes level of fiction, and like Looney Tunes can do all the violence in the world and it's supposed to be a joke, and it's somewhere in between there, because while it is live action, it's also crazy space fantasy, and you're not supposed to take it entirely real world. You're not supposed to take it on, and that's like a lot of people have problems with like Kylo Ren being redeemed or Darth Vader being redeemed, because they both did horrible things and then they changed their mind at the last minute, and then oh, I guess we're supposed to love them now. Some people have problems with that stuff because they read it like on a real world level, but it's like, no, this is a fantasy mythological level, you know. So and Baby Yoda is just supposed to be this cute little puppet who eats eggs because he's hungry, and he's a carnivore, or maybe an omnivore, I don't know. But Baby Yoda eats creatures. Yoda eats frogs and probably snakes and lizards and all kinds of stuff like that. Like, that's what they eat, you know. So you leave an infant carnivore, like, oh, there's eggs right there, he's gonna eat them. And that's just supposed to be a kind of a joke. It's supposed to be cute, but you know, not everyone took it on that level. So, you know, just basically in Star Wars, like I said with the Jedi, you know, if I took everything in Star Wars on a real world level, then a lot of stuff in Star Wars is suddenly disturbing. You know, the Jedi are suddenly not so great. The reason people are able to praise the Jedi as fans is because we don't take it on that serious of a level. You know, the whole thing where they're like stealing infants. They're not stealing them, but you know what I mean. They're abducting infants and inducting them inside of their wizard cult and their religion, and they're not allowed to see their families. If you start taking it on that real world of a level, it starts to get pretty horrifying, which is why people don't take it on that level. Anyways, here we go. For me, The Mandalorian is just a Saturday morning cartoon with fun adventures, and it's never tried to be anything more than that. If you have been reading this show on a more real-world level, then I can see how the egg eating came off as highly insensitive, which again, I'm going to say this again. If you are a real person who is having troubles like that, or if this just offended you, I'm not saying you're wrong for doing that. I'm just showing my point of view on this whole thing. But again, as a human who does not produce eggs, and this is never going to be a thing in their lives, you can take my opinion and throw it in the trash. Okay? Because, like, you know, my opinion on this is relatively meaningless, right? So again, if you're offended by this thing, I'm not telling you you're wrong. You're valid to be offended if that's how you feel, right? Like, that's okay. I'm just showing my opinion here. Okay. I think this show and Star Wars as a whole has always tried to ride that line of real world and fantasy. The audience may have to adjust accordingly. Yeah, so that's just my opinion on like how that all works. And then I added something. To add to this thread, I do believe that at least halfway falls on the responsibility of the audience to know in which context and on what level of seriousness to absorb media. We don't watch Looney Tunes and Breaking Bad at the same level, do we? And that's basically what I'm trying to say, is that, like, you know, I do feel like when we watch Star Wars, there's very clearly, and this is like a trend I've noticed in the last like 6-7 years, is that there is large portions of the Star Wars fan base who are reading this material on a very serious level, and then there's others who are reading it on a more fantasy, this is just fun, it's just silly kind of level. You know, we're not taking it too seriously. And I feel like Star Wars, because it's it's live action, but it's also fantasy craziness, it always tries to ride that line because it does hit very serious emotional beats, but then it also does very silly jokes and like nonsensical stuff that's just ridiculous, right? And I feel like that's a hard line for even audiences to try to ride, because most audiences fall either one way or the other, and it's a very difficult thing to do for this franchise. And I feel like it's almost like the franchise has been it hasn't quite found out what it tries to be, and it's different things at different times. You know, for example, Rogue One, almost the entirety of Rogue One is very serious, on a serious level, and it's like, oh my god, this is, everything's really dramatic. It has some funny moments, but it's like, people are dying in this movie. It's very real world. It's like you're supposed to be taking this on like a real world level of emotional reaction, because that's what's happening in the story. But then other times they have just ridiculous jokes, especially with Baby Yoda and his reaction to things. It's just meant to be silly and fun, and you're not supposed to take it that serious. And so I feel like it's just different audiences in the Star Wars fandom have had trouble, especially when you see people get upset about certain things that happen. They have trouble kind of reading what the intention was behind it. And maybe I do think that halfway that's on Lucasfilm, and then the other half it's kind of on the audience. Like you have to be able to adjust accordingly to what you're watching. You know, like I said, The Mandalorian is a Saturday morning cartoon adventure show. Sure, there are mythological elements, and there are, you know, there's going to be some serious and dramatic moments, but I think on the whole, this show is just supposed to be fun. It's just supposed to be some action and some fun and some cute moments and some funny moments. I don't think it's supposed to be like this Rogue One level of seriousness where it's like, no, we're all gonna die. That things are, you know. So it's just an interesting thing that Star Wars has kind of come to, because Star Wars tries to be for everybody, but it can't be for everybody all the time. Some audiences want very serious real world, like, no, this all matters, it's all taken seriously. Some audiences want, like, no, it's just fun, I'm just here to have fun, I don't, you know, jokes are jokes, it's just, you know, we're not supposed to be taking this as real. So anyways, I just thought that was really interesting. I thought that was, it's obviously a point of discussion that I think is gonna continue, and some people are really, really, really upset by the Baby Yoda eating the Frog Lady eggs. And again, I'm not telling you that you're wrong, okay, for being upset. If that's how you feel, then that's how you feel. You're valid for feeling that. You know, you can say that I'm full of shit, and maybe I am. Maybe, you know, again, my opinion on this is virtually worthless. I'm just some fanboy who's got an opinion on things. So if you want to take my opinion and throw it in the trash, that's okay, because you know, your viewpoint and your position in life is different than mine, and I'm never going to experience the things, you know. So if you're upset by this, especially if you're someone who maybe has gone through something similar to what Frog Lady's going through with the in vitro fertilization type stuff, you know, you're seeing things from a point of view that I will never experience, and so my opinion is worthless in that sense. So anyways, let me know what you guys think. Depending on how you feel, this is either a very silly video or a very serious video. And if you're upset by anything that I've said here, sharing my opinion, again, you can throw my opinion in the trash. It's okay. I'm who am I, right? So anyways, let me know what you guys think. Let me know, how did you take this as a joke? Did you take this as like a serious, like, what the fuck kind of thing? And yeah, let me know. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Bye.